So, say you find yourself with $3,000 to spend, and you decide maybe you want to buy a used Hummingbird or a new 417e-R Taylor. Now, that means these two are on your radar. This one is a Hummingbird standard, so it has a mahogany back and sides. The Taylor has a rosewood back and sides, but it also has the modern V-class bracing that Taylor is now known for. That means that this guitar at $3,000 and this guitar, which you could find used for as little as $2,200, are way inside their own price ranges with each other. And while this guitar, new, if you go out and try to find a new 2023 standard, it's not going to be the same. They are the same as that guitar, but it's a $4,000 buy-in, which really brings it right up against the Dove at $4,400 and $4,600, depending on the color options you choose. So, but used, like I say, Hummingbirds can be had for $2,200 to $3,000 in immaculately good shape. And this guitar, the 417e-R, is literally the newest, hottest thing from Taylor. And I gotta tell you, it's a great guitar. But what do they sound like? Well, they sound like plugged in, and you know, what's the positive and negative side of each of them? They're both gloss finishes. They both have, you know, one has, now I believe the Taylor has an ebony fingerboard, whereas the Gibson will have a rosewood. But today, I'm going to put them side by side, starting off with the new kid Taylor, because if you're going to challenge the Gibson, you got to step up. So this might be backwards. Maybe we should be playing the Hummingbird first, so you know what the standard is by, by comparison. You know, this guitar is the new kid on the block, but as such, I feel it needs to get its day in the sun first. Maybe the young kid needs to teach the old guy how it's done. And realistically, this guitar makes a pretty strong case for doing that. Gloss, back and sides, rosewood that is absolutely beautiful. And the Taylor pickup system versus the LR bags in the Gibson. Tuners are Taylor branded, and I think that somebody else makes them, but they have the almost Spearsville looking buttons on them. So inlays, beautiful. Binding, beautiful. Got a little rosette around the middle there. But this guitar does it really well, and it does everything really well. So acoustically, you can play it gently. Or you can hammer it. Now today, I'm using a kind of thick Taylor pick. Now, so my plectrum today is a little bit thicker than normal. I can't get it to focus. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, bottom line, it's a 1 millimeter thick Taylor pick. And so I'm going to use this same pick to make this fair. I'm going to use this same pick on both guitars because that makes it very fair, because this guitar responds really well to being played really gently. And that's something that maybe we won't find in the Gibson. Or maybe it does. Now, the Gibson booms in a way that it's just Gibsons do. And this guitar in particular has 13 gauge Elixir strings on it. And Gibson has always done that. That's Gibson's claim to fame. That is what Gibson does and has always done. Really, only Martin has done it for longer. And that is sometimes here and or there, because sometimes the Gibson does it better, depending on the year, generation, who owned who at Gibson. I mean, there was the 70s and early 80s where Gibson electrics were pretty good, but their acoustics were really not very good because they were trying to make them too thick. But at the end of the day, Gibson has always sounded like and you can take a 1963 Gibson Dove and it will still sound distinctively like a 2023 Gibson Dove, and we've proven that by playing a 2022 up against 1963. But at the end of the day, what's better for you? Do you prefer the boomy and if you turn the pickup on, now I will say this, I have the treble and mid-range, or bass and mid-range turned down to avoid drone. because this guitar and other Gibsons that I have all do one thing really well, and that is a string drone. Even when the amp is pointed away from you, even when you're behind the amp, even when it's doing something completely different, they are exceptionally good at that. But how does that compare to the Taylor? Now, the Taylor has a party trick that the other guitar does not, and that is that it has a low, a high, and a volume. So you can control not only just tone up from left, from low to high, you can also control bass and mid, bass and treble. So you can separate it out. If you need a little bit more bass, you can get yourself a little bit more bass. If you need a little bit more treble, you can give yourself a little bit more treble. You don't have to choose one or the other. Or you can max both of them out and just go wide open, throw caution to the wind, and try to blow out every speaker in your PA system. Or be responsible and set them both to 12, to 5 on the scale, and then come out with a nice little tone that comes like this. So, $3,000 for a Taylor. At one point in time, that would have been unheard of. The top end 810s used to be in the late 90s, mid 90s even, used to be like $1,500. But a lot has gone into the new guitars, and a lot has gone into the way they make them. They are different, very much so, than they used to be. And that's not a bad thing. They're better guitars. Is it worth $3,000? Maybe. I know that I feel like this is the best guitar that Taylor has made since the 810 series went away. I mean, the 810s, when they came out with the 717, 517, 317 guitars, I really did feel like when they shut down the 810, it was like, oh, because I have an 810 and I really like it. I think it's an amazing guitar. I think it does things. And for the longest time, I wouldn't buy another Taylor guitar until the AD American Dream Series guitars came out. And they, because of how thin their nitro was, really started to get to a resonant level that I could go, okay, I could buy that, And so because of that, I didn't have any Taylor except for the 810 for a very long time. I'm in love with the 417, and honestly, don't tell them it goes to my dad, but I'd choose the Taylor. You probably can find one at a decent price. There are probably a few of them used now. And if you can find one that is at a music store that is having a hard time moving it, you can probably get it for about the same price as a used Gibson of any kind. And I will say this, Taylor makes a guitar nowadays that really does stand on its own. And I'm as surprised as anybody to say that, but slope shoulders in the Gibson lineup, they are definitely separate from the square shoulder dreadnoughts. But Andy Powers put some pretty serious magic into this guitar, and unless you're just looking for Gibson sound, this one's impressive. Till next time.